last video. Okay. We are going to go over this little packet and these real quick. Sign language. We are teaching ASL. That is what we use here in America. However, it is not the only sign language. Sign language is not a universal language like a lot of people think. You can't learn American Sign Language and then decide to go to Greece or China or Russia and them speak the same language. They maybe have learned ASL, like they learn English, but it is not their language. Sign language is primarily used by hearing impaired people, but it is also used by nonverbal, autistic, people like that as well. It uses hands and facial expressions and your eyes, your body language instead of your voice and your ears. And it is not the spoken form of English. It's not English on your hands. It is a language in and of itself. It has its own rules, its own lexical rules, grammatical rules. Everything you need to be a language, American Sign Language has in and of itself. Okay, so it is not English on your hands or any other spoken language on your hands. Some myths about American Sign Language, one we just said was it's universal. It's not universal. We have American Sign Language, British Sign Language, Spanish Sign Language, French Sign Language, just as many, if not more, sign languages as there are spoken languages. And I say if not more because even here in America, we have different types of sign languages that are used. Okay. Most of them are sign systems and not actual languages. They don't have all of the things that a language would need, but there are other forms. It's like mime. No, it's not. We use mime sometimes, just like hearing people use mime. When you're signing, you can use mime, but it is not mime itself. There are some signs that may look like what you're talking about. We talked about iconic and symbolic signs. So an iconic sign looks like what it is. So you're drinking, it looks like you're drinking. But then there are other signs that don't really look like what it is. So it's not miming. You can't look at someone signing and guess what it is based on what it looks like. A lot of people have the concept that it doesn't have any grammar. Yes, it does. In order to be a language, you have to have your own grammar. ASL has grammar. There is specific ways that you ask a question and a statement. There are different types of questions and statements. There's sarcasm and rhetorical and all the many things that you can do in a spoken language. All those grammatical points. ASL has its own grammar. Another thing is that, you can't say the same thing in sign language as you can in spoken language. You can express anything you want in ASL. There's no limit to your language just because you're using a sign language. And a lot of times I've noticed you can actually describe more than just what we do in English. Because when we're speaking, we are limited in the words and what they mean. Whereas in sign language, you can actually show what something looks like. I highly encourage y'all to look up ASL stories because those are really cool, and you can kind of see them show the picture instead of using the words that we use that kind of limit us. Okay. There have been many times when I've been talking to somebody and I'm like, oh, what is that English word? What am I trying to say? And I'll sign it to myself to try to figure out what word I'm trying to use in English. We talked about in our last video the parameters. You have your hand shape, palm orientation, location, movement, facial expressions. All of those are a big part of the language. And as stated before, if you change any of those, you're changing the meaning of what you're saying. ASL has nouns, it has verbs, adverbs, adjectives, pronouns, all those parts in ASL. Those are, especially nouns, are set in space. I kind of showed y'all a picture, told y'all a story, about going to the store. And if I say I'm going to the store, I can't place the store over here because then I'm not going to the store. Okay? So if I place the store here and I'm going to I can't go to the store because it's right here. Nouns are placed in a visual space and they remain there until removed or the context changes, new stories being told, something like that. Classifiers. We also use classifiers in ASL to show things. So we talked about car and drive. You can drive a car, or you can drive a car. Okay, so that would be a classifier. If you're walking, instead of walking, you're walking. You can have 3 people walking to follow somebody instead of following them. Those are your little people. So you can use certain hand shapes to represent the noun that you're trying to show. And then, of course, they have compound words. We talked about the compound words. We talked about them having discretional words and ways of saying things. So we whisper. We're trying to be secretive. We whisper. They might sign down below. Or they might have their hand on the table and they'll just say what they want to say without making it obvious that they're talking. So that's kind of their whispering. And there are signs, specific signs, that are made to be on the down low. Just like we have words that we use, we're like, you know what I mean? They have signs that are like that. What else? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to make sure I cover all my bases. You can speak with an accent or a dialect. Just like we have people from the north, from the south, from east or west, from different countries, we have accents. So do people while they're signing. One of those that we talked about was no. Instead of have no, that's the sign for I know. Okay? People will do no or I know. Okay? That's an accent depending on where it's placed on the face. Words that don't have a sign are finger spelled. We talked about those. We talked about words that had been finger spelled for so long they kind of became a sign themselves. Like bank became bank. Fresh became fresh. So those are lexical signs. They used to be called loan signs, but they've changed it to lexical signs because loan signs are really signs that we borrow from another country or from another language. We have our own manual alphabet. So the ABCs, those letters that we learned, are not going to be the same letters in British Sign Language. So even though we have American English, British English, and we use the same letters when we're writing. Those signed letters are not the same. There are different dialects, different registers. We talked about Black ASL. I gave y'all links to watch videos that would give you more information on that. But that goes for any subculture. Just like we have subcultures in our hearing world, we have subcultures in the deaf world as well. And those will change some of the way you sign, or some of the signs that you use. Anything else? We talked about deaf people being very blunt. So a lot of their signing is going to be very to the point. But I think that's all we talked about on sign language. And then we had the technology for the deaf, and that was this paper. I don't know why it was blurry. Phone calls. There were two different ways I showed you for phone calls. One was the TTY, where they would pick up the phone and place it on a machine, and whatever that hearing person was saying would come across the screen, and then they could type back their response. There was video phones, which is kind of like FaceTime, but like it's set up as a phone service, and you kind of connect it to your computer or your TV. They do have apps now for those phone companies, so it genuinely is like FaceTime, and they can sign to each other. And hearing people that need to talk to a deaf person, or a deaf person that maybe needs to talk to a hearing person, whether it be a doctor's office with a patient, or you're a deaf person in their job, something like that, they can call that number and it will connect them to an interpreter via the video. And the deaf person can sign with the interpreter on screen, and then the interpreter and the hearing person can talk through voice instead of having to type back and forth. Alarm clocks. We talked about the different alarm clocks that we have. The ones that shake the bed, the ones that catapult you out of bed, the ones that have the light that flash, and there was the bracelet that they could wear, and it would vibrate when it was time to wake up. We talked about accommodations in the house, the fire alarm, the doorbell, the phone ringing, things like that. There's those flashing lights, and we talked about the different kinds of flashing lights. You can have a specific light for a fire, and a light for carbon monoxide detection, and you can have a light for your doorbell and your phone ringing. You can have different colors, different blinking speeds, different rooms of the house. You can have those set up to go off in all of the rooms, some of the rooms. It really just depends on that person's preference. Okay. I believe that after this video we will have talked about everything we discussed in our class. And like I said, I hope to see y'all in September for our extension, advancement, whatever you want to call it, additional continuing education for American Sign Language and the deaf community.